So I'm not going to use the person's name who asked the question because of the nature of the situation. And I'm also going to just warn you, I'm probably going to go off into the weeds in different directions because of the fact that I'm pissed off about this type of question, because it comes up from time to time and I've seen it happen in my gym before and it's really irritating to me. So the question is about guidelines in relation to parents of the kids training. So our buddy is an assistant kids instructor at his gym, and he says that the parents are becoming super competitive. Like the parents are yelling things at their kids, telling their kids to win, and celebrating when their kids are winning, and basically snickering at some of the kids who lose. He says that in situations, sometimes there is a parent who will sneak onto the mat to basically to record his kid with their phone, right? And because they want to analyze the video afterwards. By the way, keep in mind, these kids that he's teaching are about 7 to 8 years old. And so there's all kinds of other situations that he lists in here, but he comes down to, are there any guidelines that BJJ parents must follow? And, is there a certain behavior that should be upheld? Because he feels like the behavior that's being shown by these parents is inappropriate. And the other thing that really sucks about it is these parents, a lot of them, he says, actually train jiu-jitsu, which is typically not the case. Because in my experience, most of the time, if they've trained jiu-jitsu, they understand how hard it is and they back off. Whereas the parents that don't train sometimes tend to be the ones that are going to, yell things at their kids, to try to coach their kids off the mat, to try to push their kids, because they don't understand what it's like. That's why if you guys are watching this and you're an instructor, one of the things that we do from time to time, every so often, is I'll have a parent-kids night where the parents get on the mat and do all the stuff that we do with the kids so that the parents can get a feel for how hard this stuff is. Be like, oh yeah, see that hip escape, not so easy, is it? Right? You were telling your kid just do this thing, right? But it's pretty difficult, isn't it? Right? They can get a little bit more context with the training and understand how difficult it really is, and how this stuff that looks like they're just flopping around is really cool, and it's really impressive at what their kid's doing. Getting to your question, is that behavior inappropriate, and do you have to have some sort of guidelines? Yes, you do. Most often, the basic rule that I think you could go with right now in your situation is simply that the parents are not allowed to coach. Period, point blank. Parents are not allowed to coach. There's no reason for the parent to coach. I'll get into some situations why. And the parent shouldn't have much input during training. They should be sitting off watching their kid. And let me change sort of the direction of this video now to parents watching this, right? If you are a parent watching this, let me sort of give you a little, just from almost 10 years of training or teaching kids, right? Let me give you a little idea on the kids that I see do well at this stuff. When kids are on the mat here, right, I can almost tell sometimes which kids are going to be the best. And it's not the kid's athletic ability necessarily. A lot of times what it ends up being is the parent. So the parents that end up fostering some of the better kids are the ones that sit back and just watch. They sit there and just watch. They don't say anything. They don't do anything. They don't yell, coach, or scream. They just watch. Ambulance. This is actually kind of a serious video, and the ambulance goes by. They just watch, right? Now the parents, or the kids that have parents who are trying to scream or they're trying to yell things at them, and then after they get told not to do that, they're still making eye contact and they're constantly trying to be there, they're trying to be a presence on the mat, those kids end up not doing so hot. And the reason being is because, let me give you another example, an actual story, right? I had two kids, Seth and Joseph. Seth is a kid that's been with me for a long time, since 2012, and actually, it's been 2010. So he's about 7 years, and man, he's friggin' good. He's really good at jiu-jitsu, right? Very, very good at jiu-jitsu, and he continues to impress me by how good he's become. Joseph, on the other hand, did not make that same trajectory. Now, they started off about the same, the way that they were training, but here's what happened. Seth's dad sat back and watched. He would encourage Seth. He would push Seth. He would be very positive towards Seth with training. But he never said anything. He never coached. He would just sit there and watch. Just let him do his thing, right? And then Joseph was a kid, and he came in very smiley and laughing and bubbly and just having a great time. And when he started jiu-jitsu initially, he was doing great. And then one day he came in and he was acting a little different when he was rolling, very aggressive. And then he got his arm extended, right? He was caught in an arm bar. And instead of tapping like normal and just getting up and playing the game again, he started gritting his teeth and he was almost crying and getting upset. And I was like, Joseph, what's wrong? And he got up and he was holding his arm. And he told me that his grandfather had told him that if he didn't do well in jiu-jitsu that day, meaning he didn't get submitted, right? if he didn't do well in jiu-jitsu, he wouldn't be able to play Xbox. And I immediately looked at his grandfather and pulled him over and we had a talk. But I knew it was too late, right? It was already tainted. The situation's different. The dynamic's different. This kid went from having fun with this thing to no longer can he be on the mat. When he's on the mat, his mind is, in the car when he goes home. His mind is on the mat off the mat looking at his grandfather, staring at him, wondering if he's doing well, right? His mind is at home with the Xbox that he wants to play, but he doesn't get to play because he didn't do good at jiu-jitsu. Instead of being focused on doing the techniques, listening to his coaches, being around his buddies and training, right? Completely ruined the situation, and soon after he just quit. He just didn't want to do it anymore. He just didn't want to be in the gym anymore because it became such a negative place. And I've seen that sort of example happen over and over and over again. And for me personally, like when I teach people jiu-jitsu, doesn't matter if it's an adult, doesn't matter if it's a kid, I'm teaching someone jiu-jitsu not for a year, not for a month, not for whatever. I'm teaching them for a lifetime. I just assume that when you get into jiu-jitsu, it's not going to be like a couple day, month, year thing. It's kind of a lifetime thing. You just start doing it and you don't stop. And when I teach kids, I'm not teaching kids so I can make a 12-year-old world champion that gets burned out and just quits. I'm trying to keep these kids for decades, right? I want to have these kids with me for just forever. I want to see them grow into grown men, right? I watch Chad, it almost just gets me emotional just thinking about it, man. I watched Chad grow into a man, right? I've watched Seth do the same thing. Again, I watched him go from a kid, and I watched him get older and older and older again. Now he's an actual adult. I got to watch the kid do that, right? But that doesn't happen if you start being really negative with kids and trying to push certain things on the kids that just don't need to be there. So let me direct this again towards the parents. If you're a parent, do not put those sort of standards or expectations on your child. Let them come into the gym, let them train, but don't tell them, oh, you're supposed to submit so-and-so, right? Don't put this negative sort of association with it. Push them, right? Because sometimes kids are lazy because, we're all lazy as kids. If left to our own devices as children, we probably would have done nothing but play video games, at least in my generation, right? My parents would lock us outside and say, get outside and go play. Well, what are we going to do? I don't know, just go play, right? You have to do things as kids that you don't want to do because your parents understand what's best for you. That's a given. But don't ever put these weird expectations on those kids like that. When it comes to jiu-jitsu, you might have to do it with grades and things like that, but with jiu-jitsu, you don't want to do that. And push them, encourage them, uplift them when they need it. Pick them up when they need it, and again, do those things, but don't put those expectations on those kids because it changes it completely for the kid. It no longer is this fun thing. They're constantly then looking back to look for your approval, and they're looking back for other things instead of being focused on what they're supposed to be focused on, which is just the training. And so getting back to the original question, what kind of guidelines should be set? One, parents should not be able to coach. They should have very little interaction during the training session. They can talk to their kid when there's a water break, but when training is in session, they should not be yelling anything. They should not be talking to their kid. It should be just the kid, you, and the other kids, right? That's the way it should be. Completely just that's it. The kid's mind should be 100% immersed in the training rather than being dispersed amongst everything else. And again, if I know that you can't do these things because you're only the assistant, so you're going to have to talk to your head coach about this. But I would tell you that if I was in the situation where if I had to make the call, if I had a parent that was not respecting those boundaries and not respecting that I wanted the kids to be their own person when they're on the mat, then I would tell the parents they would have to leave. Period, point blank. They're going to have to leave. So that's all I got, guys. Again, I kind of just went all over the place with that one, but again, it's a serious subject because jiu-jitsu training can be this beautiful thing. It can be this thing where these kids will grow and mature and do amazing things with this stuff. It'll change their whole life completely. You'll watch these kids go from these unconfident, nerdy kids sometimes to these big, strong men that grow up to do really cool stuff. But that doesn't happen if you screw it up for them because you want them to win or you want them to be good. Let them be them. Let them do their thing, right? They're not you. They're not your worldly possession. They're just simply a person that you're growing up. But you got to let them stretch out and do their own thing. That's all I got.
Get a grip.